everybody, and welcome to a quarantine edition over the Zoom of the weekly roundup on Inside Blue 360. Thank you, all of you, for joining our show. Today, we're going to have retired detective and current college professor Al Titus, a former colleague of mine, on a show to discuss everything that's going on in policing around the country. Like we always like to do, we like to remember those officers who have paid the ultimate sacrifice since the last time we recorded an episode. We get this information from the Officer Down Memorial page, which is odmp.org. It's a great site. It has a lot of information about these heroes and the great lives that they led. We got a number of people on the list. I'm going to get right to it. Since the last time we recorded, Corrections Officer 5, Thomas Adedeo Ogunberry of the Texas Department of Correction. He died on June 11th of COVID. Border Patrol Agent Johan Morden of the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. He died June 11th of a medical emergency that hasn't been determined yet. Deputy James Blair of the Simpson County Sheriff's Office in Mississippi. He died on June 12th of a gunshot. Police Officer Dale Thomas Provins Jr. of the Jefferson Hills Borough Police Department in Pennsylvania. He died on June 13th of a motor vehicle accident. Wildlife Officer Julian Keene Jr. of the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. He died June 14th of gunshots. Police Officer Dustin Lagaza of the Brentwood, of the Brentwood Police Department in Tennessee. He died June 18th of a motor vehicle injury. Police Officer Michael Lee of the Navajo Division of Public Safety. He died June 19th of COVID. Master Detention Deputy Lynn Jones of the Lake County Sheriff's Office in Florida. He died June 24th of COVID. Correctional Officer Richard Bianchi of the California Department of Correction. He died June 25th in a motor vehicle accident. And Sergeant Dale Muller of the Travis County Constable's Office, Precinct Number 5 in Texas. He died June 28th of COVID. Those were the officers who passed away since our last recording. And again, if you want to read more about them, these heroes and the sacrifices they've made for us, you can get that at odmp.org, which is the Officer Down Memorial page. Our guest today is retired first grade homicide detective Al Titus of the NYPD. Usually that would be enough of a resume for just about anybody, but Al's a little more than that. Al is got a PhD and is a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York. He's also a consultant for law enforcement matters, and he's a motivational speaker and author trying to shape the lives of the next generation that's coming up. And he's still paying it forward and trying to make a difference in life. He's an author of 2 books, Forward Motion and The Personal Side of Policing, and we'll have links for those. We want everybody to go out and buy Al's book. And we want to talk to Al about everything that's going on in policing, because there's certainly a lot to talk about. Al has got the gravitas of having been a practitioner and someone who's researched policing, and that makes him a different cat, that's for sure. Al and I used to work together back in the end of the 90s at the Transit Detective Squad in Manhattan, where we investigated all felony crime in the subway system and all death investigations, which unfortunately back in those days, I guess probably still, Al, right?
I'm sure.
Was suicides.
Yes.
For some reason, people, I guess because it's really final, once you make that jump, it's going to happen. People
Absolutely.
jump in front of subway trains, and it's a horrible way to go. And it's particularly horrible for the train operators, usually, who are the last person to see the victim alive. Really tough stuff. But in any event, Al, welcome to the show.
Okay.
You're looking good, I have to say. We said it off camera ahead of time. You've got a great looking Zoom room. Appreciate that. Al, a lot of turmoil going on for police these days. It's very rough for the department. And it seems to be that the African American community is really upset with cops. So I know how I feel about this as a retired cop. I feel like I'm being accused of things I didn't do. What's it like to be a retired black cop during these times? And I guess if you can take a guess, what's it like for the active black cops on the job right now?
Right. Well, before I begin, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Jerry, and your entire team for giving me this opportunity, for allowing me to be part of the great show that you're doing here. I really appreciate that. So to get right to the point, it is very difficult being a retired police officer, detective, seeing what's going on in the streets today. I am constantly arguing back and forth, and it's always been this way, but it's worse now. You're always defending the police, but yet you understand the situation that the communities are upset about. Their struggles and their issues when they see these shootings and things like that. You also try to explain to the public that a lot of what they're seeing is media guided. So they're not really understanding the full scope of everything that's going on. So their perceptions are skewed. But that's very hard to explain to, the average person who hasn't been in law enforcement. For the African American officer that's out there now, I can only imagine how difficult it is to be at those protests and defending, in the eyes of the protesters, you're defending the police, but in reality, you're protecting the community, you're protecting property and, civilians, but it's not seen that way. It's a very difficult position to be in, mainly because of the lack of understanding that exists out there.
So, you and I know probably better than most that the community that needs us the most is the black and brown community. And not because they need to be policed more than anybody else. They're usually the communities that are economically disadvantaged. And that's the number one driver of crime is economics. People become drug dealers because they need money. People steal cars and burglarize stores and rob people because they need money. All of this is about money, 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 money. So in economically challenging times like we live in now with the COVID pandemic, everybody's lost their jobs, or like a quarter of the country has lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to drive crime up. Those communities are going to be impacted tremendously. Yet now there's this huge universal call to have the police retreat from their job. It was too heavy-handed. There's too much policing. What do we do?
Well, we are all in a very difficult position. The problem with the perceptions that the black and brown community have is that they see government as the overall problem. And as law enforcement, we are the first contact of the government when it comes to these communities. And throughout history, African Americans and brown people have been, repressed and things like that. And it is a frustration that is driving all of this. And it is a frustration that, in my opinion, you have politicians that are trying to build their base and trying to please a specific community or a specific base, and they're not really fixing the problem. To scale back policing is not the problem. Reform is needed in some areas, and I agree with that 100%. However, it needs to be done correctly, and that's not what's being done. In New York City, we see the shootings going up. For the last 2-3 weekends, the shootings have been much higher than they were previously. We need politicians, we need administration, police administration that is willing to actually listen to what the problems are and make solutions that address those issues. We have politicians and we have a police administration that is doing what they feel is going to correct the problem, but they're not getting information from the troops. We are the ones, the law enforcement officers and the detectives and the anti-crime units and all of these plainclothes units, they're the ones that are out there in the street. We need everyone to come together to make these decisions. It cannot just be made from the top, from the office in one police plaza or wherever else in other police departments, wherever their headquarters are. It needs to be a joint combination. I am a proponent of community policing. That's something that I believe in strongly. And I feel that, there are flaws in community policing, but I feel that if it is put forth correctly at 100%, not little drips and drabs, it can be effective. And what that means, that the most effective part to me is bringing everyone together and sitting down and making decisions. This one person making a decision or decision coming from the top without any input from the bottom and the side and the left and the right. We need everybody to come together because this is a problem. And as you can see, our protesting is going on. Now they're in City Hall Park, and it's just going to continue until we find a solution. And that's not, in my opinion, that's not what's being done.
So you mentioned about shootings going up tremendously in the past 3 weeks. And that coincides with the cancellation of the anti-crime program in New York City. You were an anti-crime cop. I think that's how you came to the squad.
Yes,
I was an anti-crime cop and an anti-crime sergeant in past. For our viewers who don't know what an anti-crime cop is someone who is out there in plain clothes. They're usually the workers in the precinct or the district that are selected for that assignment. They've got talent and they want to work. We've discussed this on the show in the past, but not all cops work. Policing is a self-determined job, and if you don't want to work, you could probably slide through life without work.
Absolutely.
So anti-crime, their mission is to go spot the troublemakers, and every human being can spot a troublemaker.
Yeah.
The difference between a civilian who sees a troublemaker and takes his wife and his kids and goes the other way, and an anti-crime cop is the anti-crime cop blends in and follows that troublemaker until the trouble is made, and then they interdict it. And we're not having that interdiction anymore.
Exactly.
And so people are getting shot up like all over the place. Homicides are up 25, 30%. Did you ever think you would see that, Al? You were a homicide detective.
No. I thought those days were long gone.
Crazy,
I can't
right?
believe it's coming back, yeah.
And I can only, the anti-crime cops have been canceled. I'm wondering, Al, how dangerous is it for two detectives to go out now and knock on doors? You would walk into any apartment building in a city. It could be a high crime apartment building. You and your partner were there. You didn't worry about anybody. No one was going to mess with you. They made a path. They let you do what you got to do. They were certainly curious what you were doing there, right? You know what to talk to. But I think detectives probably have to go out in teams of 4 now, just for safety, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would think that would be a good move if they did. It's very sad that the solution or one of the solutions put forth has been to cancel anti-crime and plainclothes. In order for policing to be effective, there have to be proactive measures. And anti-crime and plainclothes are some of the most proactive measures that exist in policing. A lot of people do not realize, and maybe our mayor and I don't know, I don't want to point fingers at anyone, but I guess I already have, but they don't understand that uniformed police officers respond to calls, usually after the fact. 7% of police calls are actually active in process. So we need the anti-crime police officers to be out there to stop the crimes before they happen. I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. I know the streets as well as I know policing, okay? So the only police that drug dealers and gun dealers are afraid of, or I wouldn't even say afraid, but are concerned about, are the plainclothes officers, the undercover officers that are infiltrating their organizations and getting information on what's going on. That's their concern. The uniform officer is no concern to these individuals. So if you remove anti-crime and you remove plainclothes, you've just given the whole city, well, the criminals that exist within our city, a free pass to do whatever they want. And those detectives, as you mentioned, going into these buildings, they are now in danger. And if an armed detective, possibly wearing a vest, is in danger going into an apartment building, how do you think our civilians and our residents and, you know, maybe someone's mother with a small child or an elderly woman who just went to the bank and cashed a check or whatever the case may be, how do those people survive if the police can't even survive in the street?
Right.
It's a very dangerous situation going on right now.
And let's be clear, 99% of the people that live in high crime neighborhoods are decent people.
Yes.
They're going to work and then they're sheltering in their apartment to avoid the violence.
Yes.
And you know, I can't tell you how many times I've been in like a bad building or about to walk into a bad building, and some little old lady will say, "Officer, be careful," or "Detective, be careful. That's a bad building."
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, I got a pistol in my hand. I'm wearing a bulletproof vest with a badge around my neck, and I'm like, "Thank you, ma'am." You know, like she's running from it, right? The people of the city need the police, and the police are needed more in some neighborhoods than others. You talk about growing up in South Jamaica. That was a rough neighborhood.
Yes, it is.
I grew up in Bay Ridge and still live in Bay Ridge.
Okay.
Bay Ridge was the neighborhood you and your team would come to for dinner, Al. Come on, I know.
Yes.
Right? You'd come to Embers for some steaks.
That's right.
So I could go, me and my friends growing up, Al, could go a whole night without seeing a police car pass us by because there was no crime. There might have been 2 or 3 cars working a 4 to 12.
Right.
That wasn't the case in Jamaica, was it? You saw 5-0 all the time, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I guess part of the problem is if you grew up in that neighborhood, you might feel like you're under occupation a little bit, right?
Yes. 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 And that is what we're seeing now. That's the push of these communities. And unfortunately, it's not the right answer to the problem. If reform needs to be done, then let's work on reform. Removing the police, defunding the police is not the answer. I understand we need social programs, we need community centers, we need those things, absolutely. Our city, and I'm sure every city, has a lot of money that can be shifted from other areas to put into these programs, which should already exist to begin with. So the fact that these programs are so limited already is a problem. But the fact that you're going to take away from the security, without security, you don't have peace of mind. You can't sleep at night. You know, your life is at risk. You cannot remove security to put in other areas. That is not the solution, and that's what's happening. It's very sad. And I'm telling you, the criminals are loving it. I saw the video the other day from 132nd and uptown in Harlem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What a disgrace. I could not, that video ruined my entire day. I could not function after that. I just can't understand what's happening here. It's unbelievable.
And that was a shots fired call. That was a shots fired call, right?
Yes, exactly. Unbelievable.
Now, could have been a setup,
yes.
But I'm willing to bet that someone did pop a couple rounds in the air.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Let me ask you, Al, you probably experienced this way more than I did. In the robbery squad, we usually got people to tell us what was going on.
Yes.
You were in homicide, a little different. What's going to happen with the culture of no snitching? It's going to be worse, right?
It's absolutely going to be worse. The police are not welcome welcomed anywhere anymore, unfortunately. I mean, well, not anywhere, but in a lot of places, especially in bad neighborhoods or crime-ridden neighborhoods. Until this thing comes full circle, and I believe it will. I believe it will come full circle. The crime rate is going to get so high that the community and the politicians are going to be begging the police to come back, more or less. And I think when we get to that point, things will kind of level out to where they were before, hopefully. But at this point, no. No one is talking to the police. No one is cooperating with the police. I'm sure police calls will go down, 911 call. Everything is going to be anti-police.
Man, rough. So let me ask you this. We had the first of all, Derek Chauvin. If I could go back in time to like the day before George Floyd was killed and beat Derek Chauvin to death with a baseball bat, I would do it, because this guy is going to be the cause of probably 1,000 people in this country to die unnecessarily because of the way he's putting police work back.
Right.
We had Ahmaud Arbery death, which, although not law enforcement related, the guy was a retired cop and they were acting in like some kind of vigilante role.
Yeah.
Breonna Taylor sounds to me like it was a coward cop who should have never been booming doors in the first place. Exactly. I hate to say it, like, that's why, for people that don't know out there and our viewers either outside New York or maybe outside the NYPD. In the NYPD, the people that do no-knock warrants are highly trained for both their tactical skills and their maturity, so that they don't fire unnecessary rounds. And if we boom the wrong door, we probably boom 1 out of 1,000 wrong.
Right.
Al, Al, like,
absolutely.
Things like when you would do a warrant, how many times does your boss ask you, you sure?
Right.
If you got a picture of the door, blah,
exactly. Blah, blah. There are so many checks and balances in place. I can't imagine how it even happened.
How that happened. and then the other one was Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta, which was I got to tell you something. I think I would have fired at him, frankly, if he's firing his taser at me. Yeah. And that was quick. That was bang bang. And when you watch that whole tape, they were really getting along with that guy. It was like, exactly the way I would want if I was the patrol sergeant. I'd want my cops talking to a guy. They're talking to him, trying to figure it out. It's obvious he's drunk. He's got to go. That's and obviously he didn't want to go. Right.
Right. Exactly.
There's going to be another death. It's going to happen.
Absolutely.
There's hundreds of millions of contacts between police and civilians. We kill about 1,000 to 2,000 a year in law enforcement in America, which, by the way, the medical profession kills about 250,000 by medical mistakes, they call it. 250,000.
Right.
Like, holy crap. That's like half as many died in World War II, for crying out loud.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
But
those are big numbers.
But people really take it strongly when we kill someone.
Yes.
So we're going to kill someone by mistake, either an honest mistake or a malicious mistake, like Chauvin, right?
Right.
So if you were going to advise Dermot Shea or the head of some city or some police chief, what would you say to him, Al? How would you tell them to get in front of that? Be in front of the mistake? Like, what would you say?
Well, I think making his presence known to the public is a very important part of it. I think he or she should go in front of the public in advance, and almost like what Governor Cuomo does. He's doing an everyday thing. I wouldn't do the everyday thing, don't get me wrong, but he's showing great communication skills with the public. And that's what they need to see come from the top. If the chief of police is on television telling the community, listen, there are problems here. We are addressing the problems. We are working on the problems. We have your best interest at hand. Should something like this happen again, we are going to take swift action to correct the problem. But in addition to that, we need community input. We need passive, calm community input. We're going to put together a coalition of people from each community or whatever the case, work with the community, make them feel like they're part of the solution and not the problem that the police department sees. Let them feel that they're part of the solution. And doing things like that and getting ahead of it by communicating with the public in advance, like you stated, and just letting them be part of the solution. But again, a lot of this is just the not understanding how policies and procedures work. A lot of the community doesn't understand that we have unions, we have guidelines. In a lot of cases, you can't just fire a police officer. There are procedures, just as if when they're working on their job, there are procedures. Maybe you have to be written up 3 times, then you have to be formally notified. Whatever the procedures are, things like that need to be explained. Even though it's a death and that's such a huge crime compared to maybe something that they've done at their job, it still has to follow the proper process and procedure. So all of that just needs to be explained to the public, I feel, and I'm hoping that we have a general public that is willing to understand and take that type of thing in the heat of something like a George Floyd case. But swift action is important, but it cannot be action that violates the officer's rights either. It has to be the right action.
I tell you, the George Floyd case, I actually feel bad for 2 of those cops. One cop had 3 days on the job and one had 2 days on the job.
Wow.
And you could, out of the academy, right? And first of all, what sergeant, speaking as a former sergeant, what idiot sergeant assigned these 2 rookies to this, because there's no way that they didn't know he was a jerk off. This is no way.
Right.
I mean,
absolutely.
Why would you, even if he doesn't go out and kill anybody, he's going to poison them. He's just going to be saying stuff and doing stuff that you don't want your rookie cops to be around.
Exactly.
Those poor guys. The one guy looks shell shocked. The Asian kid standing there. And the other guy tries to tell him. The other kid was African American. Tries to tell him, "Hey, we should check his pulse. We should do this." And he's like, "No, like, you can get that he's like an alpha male to begin with, right? Yes. And he's the training officer. It might not have been a title where he got a little extra money for it,
right?
But he was in charge of showing these kids the street, right?
Yeah.
Like, holy,
very bad situation, man.
And look, I know there's something happened, and I know something happened which we haven't seen yet, because there's a picture where Chauvin's leaning on him, and his shoulder shield is sideways. So there had to be some kind of tussle that we didn't catch on camera. Right. But so what? The guy is now rear cuffed, and you have him on the ground. That's it.
That's it. Game over.
Wow. We all know it. They drummed it into us in the police academy. While you're in a fight, you're in a fight. You fight to win. When the cuffs are on, the fight is over.
Exactly. Do not take it personal.
There's no extra shot.
Exactly.
Come on. How they put rookies with this guy. This is amazing to me.
Yeah, that is.
So he's really set the profession back a long way. I think, Al. I think this is going to be a couple of years. I really do. I think you said.
I agree. I agree. I think there's going to be some time before things come back around, and it's sad because a lot of people are going to suffer, and as you mentioned, it's going to be the Black and brown communities, the lower income communities, that are going to suffer the most. Yeah,
it's a shame.
It's sad.
My son, he's in the next room there, probably sleeping still. Very liberal kid.
Yeah,
love him to death. Great kid.
Okay.
He was giving me some liberal talking points one day, and I said, son, you probably don't know anybody in your life who's risked more and done more for Black people than me. I remember one time having my pinky in the heart of a 15-year-old kid who had been stabbed. and I stopped the bleeding. They actually took me into the hospital, and like after they had all the surgeons and everybody laid, they said 1, 2, 3. I pulled my pinky out. The blood practically hit the ceiling of the emergency room, and they dove in. He was 15. He's strong as all hell. They saved his life. You know why he was stabbed? Because he had just shot someone. But I didn't know that. He came up to me squirting blood out of his chest. So I I didn't see a black kid bleed and go like, oh, well, tough luck on him. I freaking did everything I could. But by the way, back in the day of AIDS, right? Got my pinky in there. But like he needed immediate intervention, or he was going to die.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And 90% of cops out there are like that. I'm not saying that 90% of cops work out. I'm saying that 90% of cops want to do the right thing.
Absolutely, I agree. I think it's even higher than 90%, Jerry.
There are racists out there, and there are jerks.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There are cowards out there.
Yes.
And there are a lot of lazy guys and gals out there. But I think that most people that become cops, they become cops for the right reason. They want to be that barrier between evil and good, so that good people can lead their lives and just do what they want to do.
Yes. And that's what makes this situation so difficult. Going back to your first question about how it feels to be a black officer, I mean, I've done my time on the job from the street, starting working in Harlem and Washington Heights in uniform. And my first day out in Harlem, I thought I was going to be this great hero. I thought all the black people were going to be like, yes, a brother in uniform, this is great. They hated me. They hated me from day one because I'm black in uniform. So I'm the sellout, and I'm the Uncle Tom, and I'm the all of that. But I put all that aside, and I pushed through my career. I got out of uniform as quick as I could, though, obviously. But
well, Al, I'm glad, because you were a good detective, Al.
Thank you. But it's so sad going through the entire process and know so many good police officers, and know how much we sacrifice as law enforcement, black, white, yellow, it doesn't even matter. We give our lives to the job. There are so many divorces and
how many birthdays?
I'm a victim of that because I gave too much of myself to the job. It's just so sad that picture is just not presented. That is not the image that is given to the public. It's the opposite. When in reality, what the public sees or what they perceive is such a small fraction of what we really are as law enforcement. It's very sad.
Right. Yeah, Al, I agree with you 100%. I hate to see cops hated and called racists and murderers.
Yes.
I had one shooting in my career. I shot at an Irish Catholic guy like myself. I missed him. And to tell you the truth, I felt bad about it. I tried to take a human life, and it wasn't why I became a cop.
Right.
And it weighed heavy on my head for a couple of days. To tell you the truth, really. Got made fun of, though, of course, because I missed him. So because that's what cops do.
Oh, okay.
I really hope that this painful period we're going to go through, and there's going to be pain there's going to be decent civilians that are going to die because cops aren't being proactive, like you said.
Yes.
There are going to be cops that die probably because I think kind of like with Eric Garner, there was a period of cops being assassinated across the United States.
Yes.
Because weak people who are maybe mentally ill get activated by all this hateful rhetoric.
Yes.
And they go out and take action, right? And we paid the price here in New York City with 3 of our officers who were assassinated. And Dallas paid a heavy price, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana paid a price, and there were other assassinations out there. Those are the ones that come to mind for some reason.
Right.
So there's going to be cops that die. I think there's no doubt about it. It's people shouldn't die unnecessarily ever.
Absolutely. True.
And I don't want to sound heartless, but one person's unnecessary death shouldn't lead to 1,000 people's unnecessary deaths.
Agree.
I don't want to sound like it's almost like a Marxist socialist thing, right? But really, I think we could have driven a stronger community policing model. I know we were trying to do that here in New York City.
Yes.
The neighborhood policing teams.
Right. Yeah.
And they're out there on social media and they're trying to make their presence known and they're trying to, and they actually changed the NYPD model where the neighborhood policing teams are out there talking to people and they had response vehicles to go to 911 calls, right? Just, you know, to chase those chase the 911 calls all night.
Right.
That's going to be an impossible task, I think, going forward.
For now, yeah.
And then, of course, COVID is on top of this. If we're not in a recession already, I'm sure we are, and we might even go into a depression over this thing. We're not out of the woods with this by any stretch of the imagination.
No, things are reclosing now, so we don't know what's going to happen with New York right now. We'll see.
Yeah. So they're cutting $1 billion from the NYPD budget. And that's just, I think they're just reshuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic.
I think so too. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they're sliding the school safety officers over to Board of Education. It's going to slide the traffic enforcement officers over to Department of Transportation.
Yes.
Which, by the way, I don't know if you've heard Gregory Floyd, who's the president of their union. I think he's a retired transit cop, actually.
Okay.
He was I heard him on 1010 Wins. They don't want to go because they don't get beat up as much with the patch as when they were in DOT or
yes. I remember when they were the Brownies, they used to get beat up all the time.
All the time they get assaulted. So
yes, absolutely.
I don't know, you know, he's not happy about it. You know, I think there's going to be more cuts coming to the city budget. There's no tax revenue. There's nothing going on.
True. Tourism, everything is shot.
The tourism is shot. They just announced yesterday that Broadway is going to be closed to January 2nd. That's that whole Christmas season.
Yes, that's big. Right. Radio City, everything. Wow.
I mean, for the people that don't live in New York City, the tourism is tourism and Wall Street are the two things that drive the city economy. There's no tourists, so there's no taxes.
Right.
And Wall Street is learning pretty quickly, like everybody else, that you don't have to have everybody come to an office building.
Exactly.
And so why pay that rent and do all that other stuff, right?
Exactly.
And all that is going to go away. And all those restaurants that serve all those people is going to go away. And that's a multi-billion-dollar industry. I think New York before New York reinvents itself, which it will do.
It will, yeah.
It's going to be a tough couple of years here.
Yes, it is. And unfortunately, crime, because a lot of those industries are going to be closed, and if New York happens to re-shelter itself again like it did once before, we're not going to see crime in the city because there's no one in the city. I mean, there's no tourists. I mean, we're going to see crime, but not to the level it could be with what's going on with the police. However, in these communities, that's where we're going to see the amazing uptick of crime, which we're already seeing. But as far as it affecting tourism and things like that, if COVID-19, comes back and it becomes a problem, it's not going to affect those industries as bad, but our communities will definitely be struck hard. The low-income communities. That's a problem.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough couple of years, man. It's going to be rough.
Absolutely.
Man, tough. Al, you have any advice let me ask you for a couple people, all right?
Okay, that's good.
You're a young person bopping around.
Mm-hmm.
What should they do with their lives, Al? This is I'm throwing this right over the plate for you there, buddy. Okay?
Right. Boom! Here comes a home run. So the first thing I like them to do is go out and buy my book. It's on Amazon. Forward Motion: The Secrets to the Keys to Progress and Success. What I want our young people to do is to understand that we do have problems in our world, and we will always have problems in our world. Do not get so caught up in the problems that you forget about your own progress. Stay focused and prepare yourself for the new things that are coming. Follow up with your education, learn how to start a business. Don't focus on the violence and the negatives that are happening around you. Continue to proceed and go after your goals and dreams. Because if this keeps going for 5 years, that's 5 years out of your life that you could have made certain amount of progress and things like that. For the new law enforcement officer, I just saw that there's a new class in the academy now, possibly the last class for a while, I've heard.
I think so, yeah.
That's what I've heard. So I tell those officers to just, really concentrate on tactics. That's going to be more important now than ever. A lot of practice, a lot of in the mirror, a lot of talking to people, even if you're by yourself. Practice talking, how you're going to get out of situations. That's one of the things I loved about transit. We patrolled solo. So we learned how to talk to people. We learned how to de-escalate very well because our backup was maybe 2-3 stations away. We may have been stuck in a tunnel. You got to be able to talk your way out of things. So de-escalation is huge. And don't give up. What I would like to see is more Black and brown individuals. Well, I already know that the job itself is majority non-Caucasian. I would like to see more of us make rank and get in higher positions so that we could be part of this big change that's happening. This is, although with all the negatives that's happening, this is still a monumental time in our country's history. But if it's handled the wrong way, it's just going to be a big waste. And that's what I'm afraid of. I want to see everybody prepare for what is coming, for the good that is coming, and make it something that is positive rather than just destruction and more crime and violence and death.
You're 100% right. This is going to be a rough time. It's going to be a rough time for society in general with COVID. It's going to be a rough time for policing with the fallout of the George Floyd murder. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a rough time for everybody outside of the medicine aspect of COVID because of the economy in tanks. It's a triple hit we're taking for us people that care about law enforcement and care about crime and justice. I'd like to see more Black and brown cops rise up through the ranks. We had a nice little diverse squad in the transit squad.
Yes, we did.
We had we did have a good crew. We had a couple of crazy people. We had a couple of quiet people. We had a couple of lazy people. We had some workers. We had everything.
Yeah, we had it all.
I had 2 detectives working with me in the transit squad. I had Titus and I had another guy named Augustus. I called them the Roman centurions. What a great... But that wasn't your part. Your partner was Andy Smart. I hope you're out there somewhere, Andy, watching.
Yes.
Miss you, Andy. Andy was a good detective.
He was a very good guy. Yes,
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, heart of gold, man. He was that guy had a big heart. Yes, he did.
Absolutely.
I really, really appreciate you being coming on. We're definitely going to have you on again, Al. Just for the folks at home, we're going to put up a graphic. Al, what's your? How would people get a hold of you if anybody wanted to reach out to you?
A Titus Consulting. Titus Consulting at gmail.com. That's my email. The website is atitusconsulting.com.
Very good. We'll put that up on the screen, and we'll have a link to that on our website. And this will go out on our Facebook page and on our website, which is InsideBlue360.com, and it will be on YouTube on our YouTube channel. Al, you have a really, really interesting perspective. You grew up in New York City. in a very, very high crime and poor neighborhood.
Yes.
You became a first-grade homicide detective. By the way, I forgot to mention he was a hostage negotiator.
Yes.
Which is some of the best cops in the NYPD are hostage negotiators. He's become a college professor. He's got his PhD. Did you even have your degree when you first came to work for me?
Yes, I did.
You did? Okay. All right. Very good. Because let me tell you something. Pursuing your education and being a working cop.
Yes.
It's not. It
was very tough, Jerry.
Yeah, because not to knock those guys, but most guys who pursue their education in the NYPD find like a 9-to-5 job.
Yes.
Because it gives them some stability, so they know, I can parcel out Tuesday and Thursday night to study for my courses and do my work.
Right.
Al never knew when the phone was going to ring and it was a homicide he had to go to,
exactly.
or some other crime he had to investigate. And sometimes those would take up the next 24 hours of your life.
Absolutely.
That was it.
Yeah.
Oh, Al's got a paper due. Not too bad, Al. There's a body laying in the street. You gotta find a killer.
Exactly.
I really am impressed by your achievements that you've had in your personal life with your education, the heights that you rose to in the NYPD. Everybody I know on a job has nothing but great respect and love for you, Al. Everybody talks about what a great cop you were. If they had to go through a door, they like you by their side.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell because of the point of view of the camera, but Al can bring it. So I always like going to a place with Al. I knew the sergeant wasn't going to get his ass kicked. He was always good. And Al, you have a positive message for both cops and for our young people. I think that's more important now than ever. And I want you to keep pushing that message forward. I'm glad we were here to try to help you do that today. Mm-hmm. You'll be on with us again if you come back out. We'd love to have you.
Okay. Love to be back.
And maybe we'll have a couple more people on. I think if things go well, we might be moving back into our studio soon. But socially, we'll space everybody. We used to sit like this, all jammed in today,
really?
But now we'll probably spread it out and make sure that nobody gets sick. We want everybody to stay healthy. Al, you were a great guest. I loved working with you on a job. I really enjoyed having you on the show today.
Thank you, Jerry.
You look good. I always say at the end of the show, usually with any of my guests, if we ever do one of those after dark episodes of our podcast where we're Zoom cocktailing or something like that, I'll talk about Al's first time.
Oh yeah, yes.
Sirens from Midtown Manhattan to the Manhattan Bridge. Dr. Al Titus, retired homicide detective of the NYPD, a hero, a great man. Thank you for coming on the show, Al.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on Inside Blue 360 and the weekly roundup, and we'll see you the next time.